Okay, peeps, welcome back. So today we're going to be going over the grayscale trusts, and we're also going to go over a couple of swing trades and some dividend announcements. So with that being said, let's get it. Okay, so we're going to go over the dividend announcements first. So as you guys know, the the ymax fund of funds has had their dividend declaration basically today. As you guys know, it's not showing up here, but it is today. As you can see, August 14th down here. So X days tomorrow. You'll have the chance. This is basically going to be the last day that you get to buy it for this month, because you have to have the shares on the X date in order to get paid for this month. So if you do not have the shares before market close today, you're unfortunately not going to get paid for them. So you'd have to wait till next month. But you can see the X date is tomorrow, and the payment date is on Friday. So ymax paid 59 cents this month, and ymag paid 57 cents. The thing I do want to point out about ymax and ymag is the difference in recoveries. So I'm actually going to show you guys here. Whoops, I did not want that. So let's try this one more time. ymax. Okay, so ymag did actually recover a little bit faster than ymax. In my opinion, the reason why is likely because ymag does not have exposure to crypto. As you guys know, crypto is choppy, slightly bearish, more or less basically just an accumulation. But you can see over the course of the 9 days here, we went back up roughly about 15%. However, if I go over ymag, it's kind of a little bit of a different picture. So, well, okay, I guess it really hasn't gone up as much as ymax. But the point I want to make here is that if you're concerned about crypto and you're worried that crypto is not necessarily that it's going to drag down the price of ymax, it may be better just to stay in ymag because you wouldn't have any crypto exposure then. Of course, that's just my opinion. You guys are free to do what you want to. This is just my personal opinion. I'm just some guy on YouTube. So next one here, we have qdte. So not surprisingly, there's been a lot of volatility this week, CPI, PPI, all that stuff. So the higher the volatility, generally speaking, the higher the payout. So 47.5 cents per share here on qdte. So again, the X date is tomorrow. Today's the last day to pick it up before the X date, and the payment date is going to be on Friday. And I also want to go over xdte. So this is the S&P 500 version. Still pretty good. Just a little bit under 39 cents here. Again, the X date is tomorrow, and the payment date is going to be on the 16th. Okay, so I'm going to go over a couple other things with you guys here. There's a couple of swing trading opportunities. Whether you guys, this is in stocks, not crypto. Whether you guys choose to take advantage of this or not, that's entirely up to you. So the ticker symbols that I'm looking at here is VERI for Veritone, and NVIDIA. You guys already know what the ticker is for that. If you don't, it's NVDA. Basically, Veritone is pretty much, I'll keep it short here, it's an AI company, okay? It is based in the United States, as you guys can see here. But the thing I want to point out about this is not just that it's an AI company, but that our technical signal for swing trades did trigger this morning. So we took a short-term, basically scalp trade. But the opportunity is still there. So you can see that they potentially have some allegedly agreements with Amazon, and they're getting like some kind of awards. And there's a point blank, there's a lot of stuff going on with the stock. You guys can look into all the details of this in your own time if you want to. I just simply want to point it out. It is relatively small, 122 million, kind of a micro cap stock. So I'm going to show you guys the trade here. So we're actually out of it, but you guys can see this morning we bought 647 shares at 309, got out at 341, so that netted roughly about a $200 profit. And then we have since moved into NVIDIA. So I'll show you guys here if I can find it. So we bought a little over 25 shares at roughly about $118 a share. And I'm going to show you guys those setups right now. And then we will get into the grayscale trust after that. So VERI, here it is on the charts. So you guys can see that we have the golden cross back here on the RSI. That would have been obviously a better time to get in because it would have gone up a lot more by now. MACD golden cross also roughly around the same time frame. But again, the trigger that we look for here on the swing trades is usually speaking a golden cross on the 4-hour time frame, specifically with the yellow and the blue EMAs. Okay, we want to see the blue EMA cross and close and confirm above the yellow one. Usually that's our trigger to get in. You guys can basically see from the moment that this thing triggered up until this roughly about swing high was a 38% move. We didn't catch that much of the move. We got roughly about, I think, like 12%. But the thing I want to point out here is the last two times this happened. Okay, so last time this happened, 36%. And then if this one was kind of a fake out here, but then again before that, so it kind of hit the same support we're seeing currently. We did get a trigger back here, and you guys can see this run up was just stupid. I mean, this thing was nearly 300%. Again, the smaller the market cap, the greater reward potential here, but also the greater risk. Another indication was the RSI being oversold right before we had the golden cross. That usually indicates a bottom. You can see it timed it here almost perfectly at $2. And we did get a break above this trend line, and the likelihood is that we are going to close above it. However, if I go over to something like the hourly time frame, you can see we've already confirmed above it. It's pretty obvious that it's going to head higher. So again, the opportunity is still there. If you guys want to take advantage of it, you can. If not, that's entirely up to you. But since crypto is not moving and we are accumulating crypto, we decided we wanted to put our money to work somewhere else where it's going to make money. It just makes perfect sense. Doesn't mean we're not bullish on crypto. We're still buying it. And we'll show you that this weekend. But, unfortunately, in the immediate short term, crypto is simply not really doing much of anything. So here it is on NVIDIA. A few things I want to point out here on NVIDIA. So if I actually go over to the daily time frame here, it's a little bit more obvious on the daily. So the thing I want to point out that we showed you on X, okay, we got the oversold signal on the RSI 3 times over basically the last 12 months, roughly about 12 months. So September last year, it bottomed out. It went up massively. As you guys know, that was literally almost exactly the perfect bottom. Okay, then we got another signal here in April, and it went up massively. It nearly doubled in price. Okay, and then we got another signal after this flash crash recently, earlier this month. And just to show you guys how much it's already gone up, basically from the low to the kind of the top there, roughly about 30%. Again, I do think it's going to go much higher. The other thing I want to point out is this thing usually does go up. It usually goes up into earnings. You can see the earnings symbol right here, and then we kind of find a base at support or somewhere. We get a move up into earnings, a break of this downtrend line, and then at earnings, usually it just pops off. We're seeing a similar setup here. So hit support, it's moving up into earnings, got a break of this trend line. So theoretically, it'll move up into earnings, and then it will pop off to the upside. Basically after earnings takes place. And I'm expecting NVIDIA to beat. I mean, it's NVIDIA. I really highly doubt NVIDIA is not going to have a beat this time around. It wouldn't have gained the number one spot in the world in terms of market cap if it was just going to falter like any other stock. I think NVIDIA is extremely resilient, so I'm expecting good things here. But once again, we did get the golden cross signal here on the 4-hour time frame, plus a break of the trend line right here. And so far, this thing has moved up quite a bit. So from the trigger up to the peak so far, roughly about 9%. So we had kind of this one's kind of ugly, but it did kind of go a little bit higher, as you guys can see, before eventually topping out. So that wasn't a perfect signal, but 9%. However, this one down here, which was again at support, this move was absolutely massive. So 65%. And then even before that, I can go back even further here. You guys can see way back in time. There's another one right here. This move was even bigger, so this was roughly about 101%. I would say on this trade, realistically, probably expecting to make somewhere between maybe 10 to 30%. I don't think that's out of the question. So again, the opportunity is there. If you guys want to take advantage of it, you can. If not, it's up to you. What you choose to do with it is entirely your choice. I do expect NVIDIA to come back and retest 140 at some point in the coming weeks. I don't know how long that's going to take. Again, things like that are impossible to predict. So let's get into the grayscale trusts. Okay, so we're kind of sitting on this trend line. Again, the trend line is more or less the support here. So pretty much we're looking for 11 to 13, which gets us pretty close to the end of the year, right around the election time. Fed should be cutting rates by then. It's roughly around the time in the cycle when Bitcoin should be going to all-time highs and LTCN and BCHG are oscillators. So in terms of resistance, still 13 to 15. There's a little gap here that should get filled at some point. 25 to 70 or 25 to 27 and then 54 all the way up at the highs. Above and beyond that, we're looking at roughly about I would say roughly about 75, so somewhere around these wicks here. A lot of wick price action here. Usually that is a heavy trading area usually. So 100 to 135 and then somewhere between I would say roughly about 300 to 400. Again, you kind of have a lot of wick tops up here at around 400, and you have this big fat control bar here at 300. That's the reason why I list that price out. And then 510 all the way up at the highs. And then, of course, we do updates on the Fibonacci retracement levels just to show you guys what the potential here is kind of in the more long term. So measured moves here, we're looking at roughly about 35%. 145% and roughly about 387% respectively. Now for LTCN to get back to the all-time highs, just to give you guys an example, we're not doing the fibs today, but you can see it's a massive move. So 4600%, big move there. So BCHG, we're getting kind of wedged in between here, in between these zones. Again, I see this as accumulation. It's kind of sitting and rising on this trend line and support, but we're getting held down below the resistance. I personally don't think it's really going to go much lower than where it currently sits, unless we have some kind of freak out by the markets, because Fed's cutting rates or whatever. Which again, I've already stated my thesis on this. Yeah, it's already down 70%. I don't really think it's going lower, but we already had 2 bear markets in the last 4 years, and we just had another flash crash. I don't think the markets are going down to the end of the year. I think they're going to go up, if you ask me. So support, roughly about 530 to 650. Resistance, I'm not going to count this area because this lines up with that trend line towards the end of the year. If you guys see very similar to LTCN here, it does converge right around the time that Bitcoin should be hitting all-time highs. So I would actually see kind of the bottom of this resistance as support as well. So 760, 10 and a quarter to roughly about 1270, and then I'd say 18 to 20 somewhere there, and then 2460 I believe is all the way up here at the highs. Or sorry, $24. Okay, so measured moves here, you're looking at roughly about 14%, not bad. So 50% to 85%, 165% to 193%, and roughly about 248%. HZEN, still kind of stuck between these zones, still within the wedge. Again, it's possible HZEN could just keep kind of trickling down, maybe to... I don't necessarily know how low it's going to go. I don't think it'll get below the support, but we'll have to wait and see. Maybe $2.50, maybe $2 at the lowest. Kind of get like a wick down to $2. Kind of just bobs around until we get to November, December, and then boom, pops to the upside. So support here, roughly about $2.40 to $3. You're looking at $3.90 to roughly about $4.20, $6.90 to roughly about $8.05, and then 10.5 all the way up there at the falling wedge target, which is the top of the wedge. That's at 10.50. So from support, which again is ideally the better place to buy, that's just my opinion. I wouldn't be buying in the middle of these two zones because you really don't know what it's going to do. So 56%, 160%, 197%, and roughly about 285% respectively. ETCG, so we got kind of a little pop here. I'm expecting this support to hold, so roughly about 870 to 990. Just so you guys know, below that, you're looking at 290 to roughly about $5. I don't think it gets that low. So target would be up here at 1590. And then roughly about 1760 to $20 is what I'd be looking at. So from the current price to the first target, 59%, and then you have roughly about 76% to 100% respectively. ETH, keep in mind this is no longer a trust, it is now an ETF, because as you guys know, the spot ETFs got approved. So we haven't really seen a lot of bullish price action on Ethereum as of lately, but I mean, don't mistake that for a lack of bullishness in the markets. Like I said, I think that crypto is mostly going to chop sideways at this point, probably until closer to the end of the year. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe when the Fed cuts rates, we immediately go into an alt season next month. That could happen. But again, it doesn't line up with cycle timing, so I'm just going to hold off my opinion on that one. So cup and handle pattern here, target is basically the previous all-time highs, so 46. We kind of got a little bounce here on this green candle. I'm not really sure why it bounced there. That's kind of interesting. I mean, it's kind of at those candle lows. I suppose you could look at that as an entry point, so roughly about 18. Below that, 11 to 1560 as support, 2340 to 2840 as the resistance there, and I already showed you guys the cup and handle target. So I'd be probably at the most generous point. I'd be looking to get in at 18. I wouldn't get in lower than that. That's just me. So 28 to roughly about 56% and 150% respectively on ETH. PhilG. So we did actually get this is not a weekly close, just so y'all know. For some reason, it's not showing a timer here, but it's not a weekly close. It's also not showing the amount of days left, but it's Wednesday, so we got 2 more days. But as of right now, unless we get a close below this level here at 37 to 40, I would say likely that's still support. Below that, you're looking at roughly about $5 to $13. And then, of course, the all-time high up here at 400. So you can see the potential upside is absolutely insane. So I'll just measure it from the current price. You're looking at roughly about 70% and roughly about 1,380%. So pretty huge move here. If it gets to that lower bound, 670% all the way up to roughly about just shy of 7,000%. So looks like PhilG could be a real winner here if it does go back up to previous all-time highs. So GBAT. This thing is bouncing off support. I expect this to hold. So 440 to about 517. Below that, you're looking at roughly about 250. I'm just giving you guys a level so you know what's down there. So $8 to $10 and then 32 all the way up at the highs. So from this support, you're looking at roughly about 90% and 524% respectively, 525. GLIV, this thing is bouncing off support. This thing is a flip zone, as you guys can see. Resistance turns support over the course of many, many months. So 1150 to roughly about 1470, and then the highs up there all the way at 80. I'm not really looking at anywhere in between those levels as potential entries or exits. So 491% there on GLIV. G-Link. Very similar story here. So this is kind of a flip zone. I mean, it didn't really hold as resistance previously, but yeah, it didn't really hold. But regardless, it did try to test here and got a bounce. So we are seeing this as a flip zone. So support 38 to roughly about, I'd say 45, and then 65 to roughly 84, 85, somewhere in there on that support. And then the all-time highs all the way up there at 220. So you're looking at roughly about 92 to 406% here. GSOL, again, the market's just kind of chopping sideways. I think they're waiting for the spot Solana ETF. I'd be seeing this trend line as support, so somewhere between probably 390 all the way to, or just to kind of really drag this out here, maybe down to the 300s, somewhere there. I don't know, 300s, maybe, excuse me, mid 250s. If it does, crypto kind of continues to slowly consolidate in accumulation and even bleed a little bit, which is kind of what it's doing right now. That could be potential support zones. But still, I wouldn't be looking to get in this thing unless it dropped down here, 165 to 203. Again, there is a lot of opportunity in these markets right now that are a lot better deal, in my opinion, than GSOL. So 39% move here, and then from support, you'd be looking at roughly about 213%. Excuse me, GXLM. So this one is actually holding quite nicely, which I expected it would. So that's roughly about 25. We're looking at targets here of about 53, 58, and 70 respectively. So from the current price, you'd be looking at roughly about 94%, 115%, and 156% respectively. Mana. So yeah, this is kind of a tough one. It's sitting below this line, but I do suspect, you know what? It's kind of hard to say because we have a wick to the downside here, and then we have another wick the following week to the upside. So it's hard to say exactly what's going to happen here. I'll just give you guys the zones. You can make up your minds about this one. So 131 to 360 at the kind of bottom support there. The current level is $11, and 1780 to roughly about 2050 on resistance, and then $70 all the way up at the highs. So from the current level, you're looking at roughly about 79% all the way up to 550%. And then from that lower level, which again, I don't think it's going to get that low, roughly about 907% to 3,550%. Zcash, so this one potentially is forming some kind of W pattern here. That's a very bullish pattern. I don't know if it's really all that obvious to you guys, but I'm going to show you here. So there's two ways to look at this. Okay, so you have like a W pattern here, which again, the target would theoretically be the top here, so roughly about 650, or you also have another potential bigger W pattern here, which would lead the top to be all the way up here at these previous wick highs, which we're probably going to go back to anyway. So that's roughly about 10 and a quarter there. I mean, again, it doesn't necessarily have to play out, but I would be looking at it to play out. And of course, we have this downtrend line here, so there's also that. And it did get above the downtrend line, so that's theoretically bullish. But I would say likely Zcash is probably going to close above the support. So I'd be looking at support here at roughly about 450 to 510. Resistance all the way up here at 790 to about 970, and then of course 10 and a quarter at the highs down up at the top there. So down below here, roughly about 320, which is our kind of double bottom here, as you can see on these two green candles. That still holds as a possibility unless this thing closes above this current green box here by the end of the week. So you'd be looking at roughly about 68%, 105%, and we'll just call it 119% respectively. If it gets down to that white line, which is possible, it then becomes, we'll just say 58%, 150%, 200% mostly, and then 220% on Zcash. So anyways, hope you all enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.